I'm Madison Cooper. I'm 26 years old, and I still hear his voice like a bullet in my brain. Get out. It wasn't the first time my father had yelled at me like that, but it was the first time it actually shattered something inside me, something I thought was indestructible. It happened on a rainy Thursday night. I had just returned home from my second job. My shoes were soaked. My coat clung to me like a wet plastic bag, and I was carrying a cake. His birthday cake. Yes, even after everything, I still got him a cake. I was shaking from exhaustion, but I smiled as I walked into the kitchen. That's when I saw them. My dad, Mom, my brother Carson, and his girlfriend Rachel, all sitting at the dinner table, laughing, eating steak. There was no extra plate for me. No, hi Mads, no. You made it just silence. Cold and thick like fog. The kind that seeps into your lungs and makes it hard to breathe. I put the cake on the counter and quietly said, "Happy birthday, Dad." He turned around. "What are you doing here?" What my lips parted, but the words stuck in my throat. "I live here," I said, forcing a smile. He stood up slowly. Rachel snorted into her wine glass. "No, Madison, you don't. You're a guest here, remember? Until you get your life together." I felt the ground sway. A guest, I was working 2 jobs, saving every cent to start my business. I barely slept. I cooked, cleaned, and paid for the utilities half the time because Carson never had a dime. And I was a guest. I brought you this," I stammered, gesturing toward the cake. My father's jaw clenched. He walked over, looked down at the box, and I swear he scoffed. "That cheap grocery store stuff, keep it." Then he pointed at the door. "Get out." The room spun. No one said a word. Not even my mother. Rachel smiled. And Carson. He looked down at his phone. I turned. My legs moved before my brain could. I grabbed my bag. My fingers were trembling. I opened the door, stepped into the rain, and just like that, I was gone. No one followed. No one called. No one cared. But what they didn't know, what they had no idea about, was that less than 12 hours later, I'd be sipping espresso on the marble balcony of my brand new $45 million villa in Palm Beach, Florida. And that was only the beginning. Let me take you back a little. Because this story didn't start with a birthday cake. It started with a secret I kept for 4 years while everyone thought I was the family failure. While Carson got applauded for doing the bare minimum. While Rachel basked in the praise of being a good match. While my dad said, "You'll never make it. Just marry rich." I didn't. I worked. I studied every night after my shifts. I built prototypes in my tiny room. I maxed out my energy, my mind, my soul. And eventually, my idea got noticed. An investor. Then 2. Then 5. Tech wasn't just a hobby for me, it was survival. And survival gave me an edge no one could copy. But I never said a word. Because I wanted to earn their love first. To be worthy. Foolish, right? That night, standing in the rain, I realized something brutal and beautiful. They didn't want me to succeed. They wanted to feel superior. And I was done feeding their ego. So I called my assistant. Yes, my assistant. Activate the contract. I'm moving. I'll never forget the silence on the line. You're sure, Miss Cooper, very sure. By 7 a.m., a private car was waiting. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still gray like a faded bruise. I left no note, no forwarding address. They kicked me out. Fine. I left and I took everything they didn't know I owned with me. My father's favorite leather chair mine. The deed to Carson's car mine. Bought it in cash when he begged me for help 3 months ago. The vacation fund, I funded it. They never knew. And now, they never would. When I arrived in Florida, the villa stood tall like a rebirth. White pillars, palm trees, a view of the ocean that looked like heaven weeping in color. It had been waiting for me. Like my future had finally caught up with my past and said, "I told you so." But the story wasn't over. Because the next time they saw me, They weren't sitting around a steak dinner. They were in shock. On national television. And I wasn't there to beg. I was there to win. The Florida sun didn't feel like warmth that morning. It felt like freedom. I stepped barefoot onto the white marble floor of my new home. Not a single sound except the ocean whispering through open windows. This villa? It wasn't just luxury. It was proof. Proof that I wasn't crazy. That I was never the failure they claimed. Every corner of this place whispered validation. The wraparound pool, the cascading chandeliers, the garage full of German engineering. I didn't buy this to flex. I bought this to breathe. I didn't sleep that night. Not from fear, but from relief. For the first time in years, I wasn't clenching my jaw waiting to be criticized. I wasn't rehearsing every sentence to avoid being mocked. I was just me. And yet even here, their words clung to me like smoke. Ungrateful. Disrespectful. Drama queen. That last one, it stung. Because deep down, I still wanted their approval, their love. Maybe just acknowledgement. But instead, I got silence. No call, no message. So I did what any rational, emotionally neglected tech founder would do. I stared at my phone for 2 hours, debating whether to post a single photo. Just one. Not to brag, not to bait. Just to say I made it. I chose a simple picture. Coffee in hand, the ocean in the background. No hashtags, no caption. 10 minutes later, Carson texted, "Whose place is that?" I didn't reply. An hour after that, Rachel sent a laughing emoji. Then Dad called. I watched the screen light up. Then go dark. Light up. Then fade. I let it ring. I deserved silence too. But I didn't block them. Not yet, because part of me still wanted something, an apology, a conversation I didn't know. The next day, a delivery arrived. A bouquet. Giant. Expensive. No card. I knew it wasn't from Carson. He couldn't afford that on his best day. Was it Dad or Mom? I waited. No message. The flowers wilted before the silence did. 3 days later, I got a letter. Yes, an actual letter, handwritten. From Mom. It was short. Madison, we're concerned. You're making rash decisions. Please remember, this is your family. You're always welcome to come home if you change your attitude. Love, Mom. My attitude. I laughed. Loud. It echoed across my marble floors. I read it again. They were concerned not about what they did, but about what I did after they did it. And then came the final twist, a screenshot. From a mutual friend. Carson had posted a status funny, how some people think money erases the fact that they're selfish. That was it. No name, no tag. But everyone knew. Everyone. And suddenly, I wasn't quiet anymore. Because they could mock me at Christmas dinner. They could call me selfish for chasing a future. But what they couldn't do? Rewrite the past. So I opened my laptop, and I started to write. Not a rant, not revenge, but truth. I posted the full story. Every detail. From being forced to pay Carson's traffic fines, to being left out of family vacations, to cleaning up their messes while being told I was too emotional. It went viral. People shared it, commented, "This is my story too." I felt every word. You're not alone. And just like that, their silence turned into panic. Rachel messaged me, "This isn't fair. You're embarrassing the family." Carson, you're overreacting. Mom, please take it down before your father sees. Too late. Dad called. I answered. For the first time, his voice shook. You don't know what you've done. I exhaled. Yes, I do. I hung up. Because this villa, this freedom, it wasn't just for me. It was for every person ever told to shrink, to apologize, to leave. They told me to get out, so I did. And I took the truth with me. And that was just the beginning. They always thought I'd crawl back, that I'd come knocking, whispering apologies I didn't owe for boundaries I should have drawn years ago. They assumed my silence meant regret. It didn't. It meant I was finally breathing. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I was awake. But freedom has its own kind of loneliness. When the noise dies down, when the lights dim, you hear the echoes every name they called you every time they told you, "You're too much. You'll regret this." No one else will ever care the way we do. It's funny, isn't it? How people can weaponize love and still call it family. But Florida had different plans for me. On the 5th day in the villa, I got a message from someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Aunt Rosa, the outcast of the family before I ever was. She left after standing up to my father once. No one ever spoke of her again, as if she died. Her message, just 5 words. Now you understand, don't you? I sat with that for an hour, then called her. Her voice cracked when she answered. I always hoped you wouldn't go through what I did. But I did, I said softly, and I'm still here. She came to visit 2 days later. We cried before we even said hello. She told me about her exile, how Dad called her a disgrace after she refused to sell the family home for his business scheme. She walked away and never looked back. Madison, she whispered over coffee, you inherited more than just this strength. You inherited their rage and their silence. It's a storm. But storms don't last forever. We talked for hours, laughed, reclaimed pieces of ourselves we didn't know were still alive. She left me with a journal, hers filled with the truth they tried to erase. Reading it like reading my own soul in someone else's handwriting. I knew then that my story wasn't an exception. It was a pattern, and patterns deserve to be broken. So I started writing more. Not for the internet this time, for me. Each morning, I'd wake with the ocean whispering against glass and sit with a pen. And bleed. My childhood stitched with apologies I never received. The Christmas when Dad laughed as he gave my sister the car I saved for. The birthday dinner they forgot because it was also my cousin's engagement party. Every "you're being dramatic," every "you always make it about you," every time they acted like my hurt was an inconvenience. I wrote it all. And somewhere in those pages, I found her the version of me I'd buried to keep peace. She wasn't bitter. She was brilliant. She wasn't selfish. She was starved. For respect. For space. For air. And in that villa, she began to breathe. Then came the email. From a journalist. Apparently, someone had shared my viral post with a wider platform. They wanted to do a piece. Family estrangement and silent abuse in high-functioning households. I didn't want to be the face of it, but I also didn't want to hide anymore. We talked. I shared what I was comfortable with. My name. My journey. Not theirs. And then the article dropped. Headline, When Home Hurts, the Silent Epidemic Behind Closed Luxury Doors. The response overwhelming. Hundreds of emails, messages, people telling me that was my story. I didn't know anyone else felt this way. I've never told anyone. And amidst the flood was one familiar name. Carson. His message wasn't long. Just 2 lines. You made your point. Are you happy now? I stared at it, laughed. Deleted it. Because here's the thing they never understood. This was never about revenge. It was about release. The villa, the article, the silence, they were all chapters in a book I never wanted to write. But now that I had, I wasn't stopping. My voice wasn't their property anymore, and neither was my story. Because the world is full of daughters like me, made to feel like intruders in their own homes, asked to apologize for existing with emotion. We are not too much. We were just too honest for people who preferred lies. And now I was building something. Not a blog. Not just a movement. A space. For voices like mine. And we weren't asking to be heard anymore. We were claiming it. The morning sun poured through the tall windows like golden forgiveness. I didn't rush to get up. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to earn the right to rest. But peace has its own kind of restlessness. I walked barefoot across the marble floor, every step a reminder of where I was and what it cost to get here. My $45 million Florida villa wasn't just luxury. It was proof that I survived, that I chose myself, that I didn't beg to be tolerated anymore. Still, a part of me checked my phone every morning. It wasn't hope. it was habit. A pattern carved deep by years of silence and sudden outbursts. I didn't expect love anymore from my father. Just acknowledgement of what? Of the pain of the exile I didn't even know. That day there was a voicemail. From my mother. She never called. Her voice was hushed, careful, as if guilt had taught her manners. Your father. He didn't mean it. You know how he gets. We just want you to come home. Your sister misses you. The family? We're still family. I stood frozen in the center of the hallway. Her words echoed like old ghosts. Soft, manipulative, polished in pity. They didn't want me back. They wanted their silence back. They wanted me to forget. To erase the story. To act like I wasn't shoved out the door like a stain on their perfect reputation. But I couldn't unlive that night. Get out. His voice still thundered in my skull. And now that I was successful, now that I had turned my pain into purpose, they wanted to pretend it never happened. No, I recorded my own message, took a deep breath and pressed record. I'm not coming back, because I never left. I left your house, not myself. I am no longer your version of me, the quiet girl who keeps the peace by breaking herself in pieces. I wish you healing, but I don't owe you silence anymore. I sent it. No anger, just truth. I made tea, watched the ocean curl and uncurl against the shore. That evening, I had my first community meeting. It wasn't official, just a group of women who had emailed me. We started with 6, all different backgrounds, all with the same ache. Mothers who disowned, fathers who controlled, siblings who stole, aunts who gaslit. It was strange, comforting strangers over Zoom, but it felt sacred. We weren't broken. We were breaking cycles. I shared my story. Raw, unfiltered. Not the press version. The sleepless nights. The panic attacks before family dinners. The years of pretending everything was fine when it was never fine. One woman, Jade, started crying. She said, I thought it was just me. I told her what Aunt Rosa told me, they'll say you're selfish. But healing is the bravest kind of self-respect. After that night, the group grew. So did my clarity. I began writing again. A book maybe, or a manifesto. For every girl who was told her pain was drama, her boundaries were betrayal, her voice was dangerous. They tried to raise a puppet. Instead, they raised a woman, and I was just getting started. The next week, a box arrived. No sender. Inside a photo album. Our family years ago, smiling, polished, perfectly fake. Tucked inside the back cover a note in Dad's handwriting. I didn't know how to love you. I still don't. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. It wasn't an apology. It was a confession. And it was enough. Not for reconciliation, but for closure. Because some people will never say sorry, and we have to heal anyway. I lit a candle that night. Not for him, for me. To mark the end of waiting. To celebrate the beginning of belonging to myself. I woke up the next morning to a strange sense of calm. Not peace, not yet, but a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Like the fog had finally lifted from the mirrors of my mind, and I could see myself. The real me, not the version twisted by their voices. I poured a glass of orange juice, walked barefoot across the chilled tile floor, and stood on the villa's balcony overlooking the Atlantic. The waves didn't care who hated me. The ocean didn't ask me to explain why I left. Nature just accepted me. And maybe for the first time, I was starting to accept myself. I had spent years surviving in their world. Now, I was learning how to live in mine. But the past doesn't fade quietly. Later that afternoon, I received an email from a journalist. She wrote, "We've seen your post. Thousands have resonated with it. Would you be open to sharing your full story? We want to feature you." My heart pounded. Me. The girl who once cried silently in her bedroom, so Dad wouldn't accuse her of making everything about herself? The one who was told to shut up at the dinner table? The one who was told, "You don't know what real problems are." They wanted me to tell my story. For a moment, I hesitated. Not out of fear, but out of habit. That voice again. What will people think? What if your family sees it? And then I remembered. They already saw it. They saw me. Fully. And instead of trying to understand, they screamed. So I wrote back, "Yes, I'll tell it, all of it." And I did. The interview came out a week later. It was raw, brutal, honest. The headline read, "Daughter Disowned on Christmas Eve Finds Healing in a 45 Florida Villa." The internet exploded. Thousands of messages poured in. "You told my story. I needed this. You made me feel seen." But not everyone was supportive. My cousin Michelle commented, "So now you're famous for being dramatic." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because for every snide comment, 10 more came in from survivors. From daughters, from sons, from people who had been mocked, minimized, silenced. We were a movement now. I started an organization. No More Quiet Daughters. The name came from something my grandmother once told me before she passed. A quiet daughter is often a silenced woman. We raised money. We created emergency funds for those escaping toxic family situations. We set up therapy resources, legal help, housing assistance. And then I got another letter. This one was from Rachel, my sister, the golden child, the one who watched in silence when Dad screamed at me, the one who rolled her eyes when I cried, the one who never reached out, not even once after I was kicked out. Her letter was handwritten and shaking. "Madison, I don't even know how to start this. I was a coward. I watched you break, and I let it happen. I was scared to lose their approval, so I stayed quiet, and I know that silence hurt more than words ever could. But I'm not proud of who I became in that house. I want to change. If you can forgive me, even a little, please let me try." I stared at her words for a long time. Part of me wanted to crumple it, but another part softened, because I had always begged for anyone to say something real, to admit the truth, and now she had. I didn't write back immediately. I sat with it, breathed through it, because healing doesn't mean forgetting. And forgiveness isn't permission, but maybe, just maybe, it was a start. That night, I sat alone under the stars by the infinity pool. The water shimmered in the moonlight, and for the first time, the silence around me didn't feel lonely. It felt sacred. I whispered out loud, not to anyone in particular. I made it. And this time, I believed it. The days passed slower after Rachel's letter. Not in a heavy way, but in a thoughtful one. As if time had grown softer, like it was waiting for me to catch up with myself. I reread her letter almost every evening, not to dwell, but to understand. To remember that people who hurt us are sometimes just people who never learned how not to hurt. But I couldn't forget either. That house, that life was built on 1,000 cuts, and I bled through all of them alone. Still, something in me wanted to meet her, just once, in neutral space, with nothing to prove and nothing left to lose. So I called her. She picked up instantly. Her voice cracked. "Madison, yeah," I whispered. "I got your letter." Silence stretched between us like a fragile bridge. "Would you meet me?" she asked, voice trembling. "Anywhere, anytime. I'll come to you." "No," I said. "Not here. Not my home." I didn't want her to bring the old air with her. Not into this place that was finally filled with light. "Let's meet at the coffee shop on Delano Street," I said. "Tomorrow. Noon." She agreed, and suddenly my body felt both 10 pounds lighter and 10 years older. The next day, I arrived early, sat near the window, fingers wrapped tight around a warm mug I couldn't drink from. She walked in 5 minutes late. Still the same soft blonde waves, same nervous shuffle. But her eyes looked older, wetter, wiser. We didn't hug. We didn't even smile. She just sat down, placed both hands on the table like she was surrendering. "I've been in therapy," she began. I didn't interrupt. I used to believe silence kept me safe, but now I know it made me complicit. I looked at her, this sister I used to share bunk beds and secrets with, and realized she'd been a prisoner too, just in a different kind of cage. "Dad used to say you were too sensitive," she continued. "But the truth is, you were the only one who felt, and that scared all of us." Tears blurred my vision. She was breaking right in front of me. And for once, I didn't have to hold her pieces. She held her own. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness," she said. "I just wanted you to know I see you now, and I wish I had seen you sooner." I exhaled, not in forgiveness, but in relief, because the girl who was screamed at on Christmas, the one who had nowhere to go, had grown into a woman who didn't need their love to feel lovable. And yet, something inside me softened. "Thank you," I said. "That's all. Just thank you." After we parted, I walked to the beach, shoes in hand, wind tugging at my hair. I stood at the edge of the ocean waves curling around my ankles and let it take the weight of every unspoken word I had ever swallowed. Every "you're too much." Every "you should be more like Rachel." Every "get out." They melted in the surf. And then a little boy ran past me laughing, his mother chasing behind laughing harder. I watched them, heart wide open. There was a time I thought I'd never laugh again. But healing isn't loud. It doesn't arrive with trumpets. Sometimes it's just standing on a beach, alive, free, and finally enough. Weeks passed, not in a blur but in color, in sharp, vibrant detail. For the first time in years, I was present in my life, not surviving it. I started waking up without dread clinging to my chest. I cooked meals for myself, not because I had to, but because I wanted to taste joy again. I danced barefoot to music that made no sense and perfect sense all at once. But peace, it's never without echoes. One morning, while scrolling through emails, I saw his name. Dad. My breath hitched. Subject line, "No hard feelings." I stared at it, 1,000 things racing through my head. I hadn't spoken to him since that night. The night his voice cracked the air like a thunderclap. The night I walked away forever. I clicked. His message was short. "Madison, I've seen the stories. Heard things from your aunt. I'm sorry if I ever made you feel unwelcome. Let's move past this. Families fight. We shouldn't let it get in the way. Hope to see you soon." Dad, no apology, no acknowledgement. Just a shrug disguised as reconciliation. He didn't see me. He saw the headlines. He saw the donations I was raising. The movement I was building. And now he wanted to rewrite history like it was nothing. I stared at the screen, heart pounding with a new kind of ache. Because some wounds don't bleed. They burn silently. I didn't respond. Not because I couldn't, but because I no longer needed his version of closure. Later that day, I received a call from my assistant. "There's a family at the gate," she said. "A man, woman, and 2 kids. They say they're your parents and niece and nephew." I froze. At my gate, I looked out from the balcony. There they were, standing in the Florida heat like it was just another visit. A memory shot through me. Christmas, cold, me on the doorstep, luggage in hand. No one came out. No one let me in. And now they stood here hoping to be invited. It was surreal. I walked down slowly, barefoot again, the stone cool beneath me. Dad stepped forward. His eyes scanned the villa, lips tight. "This place is bigger than I imagined." I didn't reply. Mom looked thinner, more weathered. Time had been honest with her. She held my niece's hand. "Can we come in?" she asked. The old me would have rushed to open the doors, to erase everything for a few sweet crumbs of approval. But the new me, I studied them. "What are you hoping to find here?" I asked softly. Dad cleared his throat. "You've made your point. You're successful. You didn't need us." That wasn't what this was about. "I didn't need permission to live," I said, voice steady. "I needed to feel loved, safe, wanted." He flinched, just slightly. "And you screamed me out of your house because I asked for respect." A long pause. Then Mom whispered, "We miss you." I looked at my niece. Big brown eyes. She looked like me at that age, wondering why the grown-ups didn't know how to be kind. "Maybe one day," I said, and then I stepped back inside. I wasn't cruel, I wasn't vengeful, but I was free. And sometimes protecting your peace means closing doors with love, not hate. I watched them leave through the gate. No shouting, no drama, just silence. But this time, I wasn't crying behind a locked door. I was standing in my home, whole. That night, I couldn't sleep, not out of sadness, not even because they came, but because I finally understood something no one ever taught me growing up, that boundaries weren't cruelty, they were compassion for yourself. Lying in my California king bed surrounded by silence, I remembered all the nights I cried myself to sleep in my childhood room, afraid of being too much, too loud, too emotional, too independent. But here I was, owning 14,000 square feet of proof that too much was never the problem. It was their inability to hold space for a daughter who dared to dream bigger than silence. The next morning, I received a call from a foundation I had quietly been funding. They wanted me to speak at their next gala as a keynote, not because of my money, but because of my voice. It hit me like lightning. I wasn't just rebuilding my life. I was becoming a voice for others who were still hiding in their parents' shadows, afraid to step into the sun. I said yes. A week later, I stood on a stage in a room full of women who wore invisible scars just like mine. I told them everything. About the Christmas dinner, about the shout, about walking away with nothing but a suitcase, and a little flame inside me that refused to die. I told them about the loneliness, the rage, the ache of being erased from your own family, and the healing that comes from rewriting your worth in your own handwriting. After I finished, the applause didn't come right away. There was silence, a deep, holy, heartbreaking silence. Then one woman stood, then two, and soon the entire room rose. Not for me, but for themselves. They saw themselves in my story, and I finally felt seen without performing pain for approval. After the event, I walked back to the car and checked my phone. A single message from an unknown number. "I saw you speak tonight. You've changed. I don't know if I ever knew who you really were. Rachel." Tears spilled down my cheeks. Not from hurt, but from the bittersweet truth that healing sometimes leaves us further apart from those we once shared everything with. But that's okay, because growth doesn't always mean reunion. Sometimes it just means peace. Later that week, I walked barefoot again, this time by the pool. Florida air soft against my skin. I thought of the girl I used to be, hungry for approval, desperate to belong. I whispered to her, "You made it. I'm proud of you." And for the first time in my life, I believed it. It's strange how healing doesn't come all at once. It doesn't arrive like a parade. No confetti, no grand announcement. It slips in quietly, like morning sunlight sneaking through the blinds before you open your eyes. One day, you realize the things that once shattered you now hold no power. They're just memories. Painful? Yes, but not prisons anymore. I began to thrive in ways I never imagined. Not just financially, though yes, the villa had become a symbol of freedom, but emotionally, spiritually, even physically. I started writing again. Not emails or scripts, but journal entries. Letters to my younger self, to my future self, to the parents who never quite knew how to love me right. And that's when it happened. One of those letters went viral. I had published it anonymously at first, a post titled, "To the Daughter They Erased." But the internet has a funny way of finding you. Soon, my inbox was flooded with messages from women, men, teens, even grandparents. They wrote things like, "This is my life. I cried reading this. Thank you for putting my pain into words." Suddenly, I wasn't just the girl who walked out of her parents' house into a mansion. I was a voice, a mirror for others, a torch in the dark. I received invitations to speak across the country, book deals, podcast interviews, but I said yes only to what felt real. I didn't want fame. I wanted truth. Because in a world obsessed with appearances, I knew too well what it cost to wear a smile that didn't belong to you. One night, months later, I stood on my villa's balcony, the Florida breeze whispering through the palms. I thought I was alone until I heard footsteps. Still afraid of the dark? A voice teased behind me. I turned. It was Elijah, my childhood best friend. We had lost touch after high school. He had seen the viral post and somehow found his way back into my world. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. And for the first time in years, I laughed without flinching. He didn't see me as broken. He saw me as becoming. Over the next few weeks, he stayed, cooked with me, helped repaint a few rooms, taught me how to fall in love with the quiet again. And in that silence, I heard the clearest truth of all. I never needed the world to validate me. I only needed to stop abandoning myself. Elijah was still asleep when I crept out onto the balcony that final morning. The sun hadn't fully risen, but the sky was already painted in soft streaks of pink and gold. Florida had a way of greeting the day gently, unlike the cold, sharp mornings I remembered back in my childhood home. I sipped my coffee in silence, listening to the palm trees rustling like they were whispering secrets to each other. And maybe, in that moment, they were whispering to me too. The girl who once sobbed behind a locked bedroom door was now standing in a $45 million villa. Not because of revenge, not because of rage, but because she finally believed she deserved more. And that belief had changed everything. A message popped up on my phone. From Dad, just one word: dinner. It sat there blinking back at me. I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. I just stared at it, letting every memory rise and pass like clouds across the morning sky. I hadn't spoken to him since the day he screamed, "Get out, I didn't need his apology anymore." But maybe he needed a chance. Maybe the silence had spoken louder than any shouting ever could. I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I walked back inside where Elijah was standing by the stove making us breakfast. "You okay?" he asked without looking up. "I am now," I said, and meant it. Later that day, I drove to the beach. No security, no entourage, just me barefoot in the sand, wearing a white dress that danced around my legs like freedom itself. I wrote something in my journal. I built this life, not to prove them wrong, but to prove myself right. Love doesn't come with conditions, and neither does healing. I closed the journal and watched the waves crash and return over and over, like the rhythm of everything I had survived. Behind me, I heard kids laughing, a family building a sandcastle. It didn't sting anymore. I didn't long for what I never had, because I had something better now. Peace. Later that night, I invited a few close friends over real ones. People who'd stood by me not for what I had, but for who I was becoming. We laughed. We shared stories. We toasted to resilience. And as the moon rose over the ocean, I finally saw it clearly. The villa wasn't the prize. I was. Because in losing everything I thought I needed, I found the one thing no one could take from me again: myself.